I'm done. I quit. This has probably been the hardest video I've had to do so far. I've decided that social media is no longer the right fit for me, for my vision, for my goals, for my values. So, this will be my last post on social media. My plan is this. I'm recording this video as I speak. When I'm done, I'm going to edit it into a vertical format, and I am going to post that on my social media channels, and I am going to remove all of my other content. And this will be my last post. And from there, I will be moving on and focusing 100% of my energy on my YouTube channel, and building this community with you. And I am extremely excited about that. So let's go deeper. So, number one, let's define what done means, right? Am I deleting my accounts? No. Why not? The reason I'm not deleting my accounts is because the Black Renaissance username is a valuable piece of digital real estate that I don't plan to just give up. I'm going to hold on to those mainly so that nobody else can come along and snag the Black Renaissance username and operate social media accounts under that name. That's definitely not a scenario that I'm interested in. So I will be, holding on to my usernames. But I will not be active in any regards. I do plan to, continue to use Instagram for direct communication, right? Because YouTube itself doesn't really facilitate that. And I'm not really that into email, to be honest. And I'm definitely not just throwing my phone number out like that. So, if I connect with one of you here on YouTube and we need to take the conversation further, then most likely I'm going to say something like DM me on Instagram. So it is going to be useful for that purpose, but I don't plan to be on there consuming any content. I don't plan to be on there sharing any content. We will be inactive indefinitely, and as far as I expect, forever. Let's quickly touch on what this video is not, right? Number one, this is not intended to be any sort of judgment against anyone that uses social media, loves social media, enjoys social media, or even doesn't enjoy it, and maybe you hate it and you wish you weren't on there. Either way, I'm not judging you. I'm here to talk about my personal journey, my personal perspective. It's up to each individual to navigate their own path, and by no means am I here to tell you how you should navigate yours. And number two, this is not an attempt by any means to convince anybody that you need to leave social media or that you need to change the way you're interacting with social media. That's for you to decide. It's not my place to opine on that. So, I have, to add to this, I have relationships I've built with other beat makers in this space that have Instagram or TikTok as their primary strategies, right? And, if any of you watch this video, you know who you are, right? This is by no means meant to be me casting stones or, presenting a holier than thou type of argument, right? This is, for me to speak about my own preference, my own perspective, and my own reasonings, at how I arrived at this point, right? So it's all love, to all my Instagram relationships that I've built. It's all love. I don't really have any relationships on any of the other social media sites, to be honest. But, I've met some real ones on Instagram, and, it's all love. So let's keep it going. All right, so let's dive straight into the 5 reasons that I've decided that I'm going all in on YouTube and removing myself from all of my social media platforms. So number one, here's the number one reason. I have 5 reasons. I think this might be probably the most important one to me. And that reason is artistic integrity. What I really appreciate about YouTube is that I can create art for the sake of creating art. I don't feel the pressure to repackage it into something that wasn't my original intention in order to please an algorithm. And I think that the other great thing about YouTube is that you have freedom of format in terms of how you're delivering your content, right? I'm not being forced into a vertical format. I'm not being forced into 10-second, 30-second, 60-second clips, right? Now, YouTube has all that as well, but it's more of an add-on. It's more of an overlay than it is the core platform. And the way YouTube is set up just resonates with me so much more. And I just feel generally freer to move about how I please. I also enjoy creating at my own pace. The daily pace of social media is just not for me. Creating content every day and, checking the analytics every day in order to be successful on these platforms just doesn't really fit with my style, the way I create, or even just my basic perspective on just life and how I move about generally. I'm a very relaxed person, and to have to move in a forced, rigid structure on a daily cadence like that just really doesn't resonate with me at all. Because okay, so someone's gonna make the argument that YouTube is social media, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that, but I do think that it sits in a category of its own in terms of the role that it plays in society. So when I say social media, let's qualify that as the daily platforms. The platforms where in order to really be successful as a content creator, you really have to operate at mostly a daily cadence, right? Perhaps with, a day or two off each week, but you're really looking at daily. I don't feel that I'm able to express myself artistically the way that I envision within that paradigm. It just doesn't really fit the way that I create. I truthfully want to create art for the sake of art. And that's not to say that, I don't want some measure of success. That's not to say that I wouldn't love to do this full time, which I'm currently not, full disclosure. YouTube as a creative outlet just fits me better, much better, truthfully, than social media does. So let's take those ideas a little further. Number 2 on the list is that I find personally long form content to be much more rewarding to create than short form. And for those that don't know what long form content is, it's effectively like what we were used to before shorts and stories and the 60-second vertical clips became a thing, right? It's your more standard, horizontal, multiple minute videos that, can go anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes to 30 minutes or even an hour or longer, right? That's long form content. Short form content are these little vertical snippets that typically don't run for more than 60 seconds, often much less than that. And they have about 5 seconds to hook you in, and then they play on a loop. And look, I've done them both, and for me personally, I do not enjoy in the slightest creating short form content. And truthfully, you know, the way I've kind of gone about it lately in order to kind of satisfy the algorithm is that I've just taken my long form content and just cut it down into short form content and just kind of just made a series out of that and just released that, you know, as a stream over the course of, you know, several days or so. And I mean, that seems to be working, honestly. And I know I'm not the only one that's doing that. So, you know, I felt like I can live with that. And I'll continue to do that for YouTube, but I'm not going to be doing that for social media any longer. From an artistic standpoint, I'm much more interested in creating what they call evergreen content, which has the potential to be timeless effectively. And so once again, evergreen, for those that don't know, means content that effectively doesn't have a shelf life. And for the record, when I say content, that's inclusive of my music. That's my music videos, that's beat making videos, that's lyric videos, and, you know, any piece of content that kind of is surrounding my music or related to my music, you know, even something like this, right? All of it's content. But across those categories, I don't want to make content that's just disposable, that I put online today and by tomorrow it's gone and forgotten, right? Evergreen content is content that has the ability to be discovered a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, right? It doesn't really have a shelf life. And a good example of evergreen content is like your typical music release. And it may be discovered by somebody today, or it may be discovered by somebody in 10 years. And either of those parties will enjoy it just the same. But on social media, you don't have evergreen content. You create something today, in a week, that is obsolete. You know, not to say someone can't come on your profile and go scroll down to the bottom, but that's just typically not how people use those platforms. In fact, I mean, the research shows that people in general don't even go on profiles anymore, right? Everyone's looking at their feed, they're looking at the screen, whatever Instagram or whatever other social site is feeding to them is where the large majority of people are consuming. If your piece of content doesn't make it into someone's stream, you know, within the day or so following you're putting it out, they're likely never going to see it. And there's really not much in the way of discoverability on social media platforms unless it's a viral post, which is rare. And the other thing that's great about long form content is just the level of engagement that you get from it is so much deeper than from the short form, right? I've seen it both ways. The conversations that, you know, I've had here on YouTube from the few videos that I've put out so far have been so much deeper than any of the conversations that I've had on Instagram over the last 4 years. I've met some really cool people here on YouTube that I've gotten into some deep conversations with. And one of the things I really enjoy is when I put out a video and we have the OGs that have like deep experience dating back into the 80s and the 90s that, you know, put paragraphs worth of knowledge just right there in the comments for everyone to consume. I could tell you for a fact that doesn't happen on social media. On Instagram, if you have a post that does well, you might have a few heads that throw a couple sentences out there, but for the most part, it's gonna be fire emojis, right? I'm tired of fire emojis. You know, let's have something to say. Let's get into some real active conversation. Let's build a real community that has something to say besides fire emojis. All right, so number 3. You know, given all that I've shared in terms of why I prefer YouTube, then the next logical conclusion is that, well, if that's my priority, then why spread myself thin, right? There's some other good videos on YouTube where people talk about leaving social media, and what you'll see a lot of them do, I'm not going to do it, but, you know, they'll have like a cup and they'll say, this is all of your time and energy, and they'll have it filled with like water to the top. And then they'll have an empty cup that's like YouTube, another empty cup that's Instagram, another empty cup that's TikTok, and so on and so on. And then they take, this cup of water that's full, and they start pouring it into their YouTube cup, and they go maybe 80% of the way, and then you got the other 20%. That's like, okay, well, what do I want to do with that? You can either spread it into Instagram or TikTok or, whatever else. Or, if you're really serious about your YouTube strategy, 100%. Let's go all in. 100%. Let's put all that time and energy into the one cup, and we'll leave the others empty and leave it like that, And that resonated with me, and that's the way I want to move forward. I want to go all in. I feel confident. I feel extremely confident that whatever I'm giving up by leaving social media, I'm going to more than make up for from the extra focus that I'm going to have to make better music, better videos, to get deeper into my understanding of just how YouTube works and like what makes it tick, right? And just being able to just be more thoughtful about strategy and how I'm moving, and just thinking about those things that kind of sit on the edge that maybe you don't really get to, that now I'll have time for because I'm not going to be thinking about anything else. And I think that ultimately YouTube, whether we like it or not, YouTube, it's a competitive space. I think there's more than enough room for all of us, but at the same time, we're still competing for eyeballs. You're competing for people's time, right? If I click video A, that means I didn't click video B. If someone clicks his video, that's time that they're not watching my video. So if you really want to be the best at it, you have to find a way to develop an edge, right? But how do you develop an edge when you're spreading yourself all over the place, right? I like the idea of just being a Jedi at this and just letting everything else go. That's exciting to me. And I think that's just generally how I operate. Like I prefer to be, even with my professional career, music aside, I've developed it in a way where I've become an expert in a narrow area. And I've enjoyed that. I prefer that over kind of just being broad and shallow. And, I know for many, they prefer that, and that's okay. And, truth be told, I mean, like, creating long-form content requires more of what they call deep work, which I just prefer. Return to Forever, the song I did with Rex, I shot and directed a full music video for that song. It was a lot of work, but it was truly rewarding. This video is a lot of work. I mean, it took a lot of preparation to get ready to sit down in front of the camera and talk about this, right? I had a lot to unpack mentally in terms of how to communicate all of this coherently. I had to sit down and, really, really think about this. But in the end, I know that it's going to be extremely rewarding to get it all together and then put it out. And, another angle of it is that I'm just tired, super tired of the rabbit holes on Instagram. I can tell you that it's way too often that I'm opening my Instagram app with the intention of doing something very specific. And I look around 5 minutes later and I don't know what I'm looking at, and I don't know why I'm looking at it. It's just so quick to take you down rabbit holes that have nothing to do with why you're there. It just so quickly just becomes toxic in terms of just what they're showing you. For example, I used to skateboard back in the day, and I still enjoy watching skateboarding videos. But you go on Instagram, you start watching a couple skateboarding clips. Next thing you know, you're watching some dude's face get bashed into the ground off of a bad slam off of his skateboard. Don't dare watch it, because from there, every video is going to be a slam of people just getting wrecked off of just nasty falls and stuff. And it's just like, why are you showing me people? I wanted to see people skateboard, not slam back to back to back to back to back to back to back. Like, it's ridiculous. And it's just this toxic, and I'm sure others can relate, in whatever their other personal areas of interest are. It's like, it will take you down a negative road and just keep going if you let it. And it's just not a fun space to me. And all right, and number 4, the truth is that I fundamentally don't trust social media companies. I don't think that they have the best interest of humankind at heart, to be honest. I think that they're fueled by money and greed. And I know, I can hear, and I know some of y'all are starting to groan like, oh no, we got a conspiracy theorist over here. But hey, listen, like I said, I'm not trying to convince anybody of this. This is my own personal take. I don't trust them. And I don't really want to be a part of what they have going on. I think that they exploit human psychology. And, I'm not ignorant to the fact that YouTube and just many corporations in general, to some degree, leverage human psychology. But I think that social media takes that idea to its extreme and is exploiting us and our weaknesses to our detriment. I think social media comes with a societal cost. And I do not think that I don't think that it's to society's benefit from a net perspective, right? Obviously, there's some good things about it. But if we talk about the good and we talk about the bad, I have a hard time believing that the good outweighs the bad. That's my opinion. I'm a little bit anti-establishment by nature. And, I have a history of going against the grain. And, why should this be any different? I think that I gave it a fair shot. But I think I'm ready to move on. There's a saying, I'm sure many of you have heard it, that if you can't figure out what the product is, you're the product. And there's nowhere where that's more true than social media. You could argue there's an element to that on YouTube, but on YouTube, you have the option to pay for a subscription, which means you don't get ads. And if I'm paying for a subscription, then it's very clear what the product is, right? Versus Instagram, it's like, well, I'm not paying for anything. What's the product? Oh, I'm the product, because they're exploiting my human weaknesses and feeding me ads in return in order to generate revenue. And, at the end of the day, like, I don't want to be your product. I'm not interested in that. So add that to the list. And the 5th and final reason is, as I've mentioned on other videos prior, I'm seeking simplicity. So as I was getting ramped up with this YouTube channel, just before I posted my first talking video just a few weeks ago, I had started to shut down my social media then. But when I came up with the idea of, okay, I'm not going to create short content, I'll just take my long form content and repurpose it as shorts. Once I came up with that idea, I was like, well, if I'm going to make the shorts anyways for YouTube, then why not just copy them over to Instagram, copy them over to TikTok? And for a while I thought that, okay, that can work. I'm not going to actually be actively creating shorts or actively creating content for those platforms. I'm just effectively mirroring what I'm doing on YouTube Shorts over there. But I was sitting down yesterday and starting to take the clips that I created for YouTube Shorts and post them on Instagram, post them on TikTok, and I'm just like, why am I doing this? This is not fun. I don't enjoy this. And it just felt like a lot of extra work for, truthfully, not that much gain. Truth be told, I don't feel like I was getting much in return for that. And I'd rather just have the simplicity of just doing it once for YouTube and being done. It probably helps to know that I already didn't use social media for my personal life, and I haven't in a long time. I stopped using social media personally back in, like, it might have been 2011, something like that. And the only reason I got back on it was when I came out of hiatus. More on that later. I took 10 years off from music. We'll come back to that in another video. But when I came back, let's call it out of retirement, as Black Renaissance, I created my social media accounts for music, thinking that, okay, I'm not doing anything really personal on there. It's all just music. And I thought, for a while that I'd be okay with that. But truth be told, for all the same reasons I'm not on there privately, I still don't want to be on there, even professionally. So, this is really just me being consistent about something that I've already felt strongly about for a long time. And now, rather than just having it apply to my personal side, it's going to apply to everything that I do. I just won't be on social media. And that's that. Another layer of this is that, I'm really into the idea of minimalism. I practice that in the way I live, in a much broader sense than just what I do on the internet. I try to not own more than what I need. I try to be very intentional about what I purchase, what I hold on to. I'm quick to let things go if I find that I'm not using them. And I guess, like, this kind of circles back to the MPC video, and everyone was like, why are you getting rid of your MPCs? But it's just like, I don't need 3 beat machines if I'm only using one of them. And, these ideas of minimalism extend to my digital life. I'm tired of playing the game, to be honest. I'm tired of being in the rat race. These platforms make you feel like, if you're not everywhere, then you're nowhere. And I think a lot of us buy into that. And I've just reached the point where I don't want to buy into it anymore. I feel like I get a lot of personal value and satisfaction and what's the word I'm looking for? Fulfillment. Fulfillment. I feel like I get a lot of fulfillment out of what I'm doing here on YouTube. And I just want to focus on that. I don't want to do the other stuff anymore. And if that means that I have slightly less followers or slightly less people paying attention, I think I'm okay with that. I'm of the mindset at this stage that I really want to focus all of my energy on connecting with my core audience, no matter what the size is. If it's one person, if you watching are the only person who gives a shit, then I'm okay with that. It's me and you. Let's go, right? If it's 10 people, cool. If it's 100, cool. If it's 1,000, cool. Whatever. 10,000, that's fine. I prefer that over 1 million followers that have nothing but a superficial interest in what I'm doing. So that's a big part of my thought process as well. So I think that covers my core 5 reasons for leaving social media and going all in on YouTube. I have to say, this was by far the toughest video I've had to do so far. I just feel like there's just so much to unpack when it comes to this topic. Like I said, I'm not trying to convince anybody, but I wouldn't be upset if I inspired a few people that maybe have been on the fence and now are thinking a little bit deeper about their own relationships with social media. All right, so with that, I gotta wrap this up. Camera's about to die. Memory card's about full. I hope this video connected with a few people, hopefully inspired a few people, and if nothing else, you'll have a sense of understanding for why I pulled the move I just pulled, which was pretty extreme by most standards. I appreciate everybody that's tuned in. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, give this video a like, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I'm really curious to know, where are you in your own social media journey? How are you thinking about your relationship with social media, and how that looks going forward? So with that, I'm going to wrap this up, and we will now resume our regularly scheduled programming. Thank you.